Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, it's become far too convenient for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party to forget this moment.
Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
Yes, you heard that right. Labour MP Tahir Ali stood up in the House of Commons and called on the Prime Minister to introduce blasphemy laws. And what was the Prime Minister's response?
We are, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms.
Well, he didn't deny it, did he? And there's a very good reason for that. The Labour government is currently conducting a review of the definition of Islamophobia, led by former Conservative Attorney General Dominic Grieve on the appointment of Angela Rayner. But we know exactly where the government is coming from on this, don't we? I've talked about it before, and it's important. In 2019, the Labour Party adopted the all-party parliamentary group definition on Islamophobia, which states this: Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. The report from the parliamentary group stated the recourse to the notion of free speech and a supposed right to criticise Islam results in nothing more than another subtle form of anti-Muslim racism, whereby the criticism humiliates, marginalises and stigmatises Muslims. One real-life example of this concerns the issue of grooming gangs. In other words, reference to grooming gangs, which is, of course, just a euphemism for rape gangs, could amount to Islamophobia and potentially a crime under the Labour Party's watch. Now, in an important interview today, Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch has rightly warned that the Labour Party cannot be trusted on freedom of speech, citing the aforementioned case of Tahir Ali as an example. The point is that J.D. Vance was right when he made this statement that shocked the world at the Munich conference earlier this year.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
The United Kingdom is the home of free speech, and yet the Labour Party is actively threatening it. If Labour had any sense, it would bring an end to this review and clamp down on this authoritarian streak within its party.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GBNews discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GBNews to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Well, joining me now to discuss all of this is the Times columnist and author Melanie Phillips. Melanie, thank you for your time this evening. Kemi Badenoch giving quite an important speech today, at least in discussion with the Daily Telegraph, saying that she thinks this authoritarian streak within the Labour Party deserves more attention, and pointing specifically to this definition of Islamophobia as being problematic. What's your take on that?
Well, I very much agree. It's deeply problematic. The point about free speech is very well made. And indeed, the argument we heard earlier from Tahir Ali, I think it was, that goes as follows, that if you criticize Islamophobia as dangerous, that is itself Islamophobic, takes us into a kind of Orwellian sphere of argument completely. Of course, it's an attack on freedom of speech for this reason. Of course, we should all oppose prejudice against anybody, Muslims included. But the term Islamophobia is a term of art that was introduced. It was invented by the Muslim Brotherhood, an extremist Islamist organization, with this specific intention of shutting down all criticism of Islam or the Muslim world. And that includes also what we would call blasphemy, criticism of a religion which is outlawed under law. And that is pretty intolerable. Because, all religions need to be criticized, all communities need to be criticized. And to single out this community as one which is above criticism, and that anyone who criticizes it is therefore racist and Islamophobic, and anyone who, as I said before, criticizes the very notion of Islamophobia as a means of shutting down debate is Islamophobic. This is very much inimical to British tradition.
Now, supporters of this definition, the APPG definition that was brought forward in 2018, which, as I said, included references to things like the rape gangs, to the demographic rise of Muslims within Western populations as examples of Islamophobia. Well, they would say we have laws, we have definitions that apply to anti-Semitism, to other forms of prejudice, and therefore we need this new definition of Islamophobia to basically level the playing field. What would you say to that?
Well, first of all, anti-Semitism is not illegal. What is illegal is to incite crime, is to incite violence and things like that. But, there's lots of stuff that's going on that has always been anti-Semitic. I mean, much of English literature is anti-Semitic, and the Jewish community has never said that that should be outlawed. So that is a non-starter. Also, the comparison between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which people who support the Islamophobia definition very much stress, is, in my view, wildly inappropriate for this reason. Islamophobia, as I said, is a term that's invented to shut down all criticism of Islam or the Muslim community. Anti-Semitism is a very specific prejudice which is beyond racism. It has unique characteristics, uniquely murderous characteristics. It is unique in the sense that it demonizes the Jewish community. It holds them responsible for all the ills of the world. It invests them with supernatural abilities to control everything. These and many other characteristics are unique to it and make it uniquely awful and uniquely dangerous. So there is absolutely no comparison between that and a term which is designed to shut down legitimate and necessary debate.
And where do you see this debate over Islamophobia evolving in the years ahead? Because from where I'm sat, it's not just about this definition. We've also got the non-crime hate incidents that are being rolled out, despite the police saying this week that actually they don't know if they make a difference. We've got this ongoing attack on free speech that we've seen ever since Southport, people being thrown into jail for what they wrote on social media. I mean, do you think it's too far, as JD Vance hinted, to say that the UK is actually in the grip of a very serious and escalating free speech crisis?
I don't think it's a stretch at all, but I think it goes beyond free speech. I think it's extremely unfortunate, to put it mildly, that the Starmer government is preparing to suppress necessary, in my view, criticism of the Muslim world at the very moment that the Islamization of Britain is getting out of hand. We have now the arrival of sectarian Muslim politics in various respects. We've had, 40%, according to an opinion poll, 40% of Muslims who were polled think that there should be a specifically Muslim party. In Wickham, we have seen Muslims being told by pro-Hamas activists how to vote in next week's municipal elections on the grounds that whichever candidate they choose should support a boycott of Israeli goods. Stuff like that is going on. So in my view, the introduction of the Islamophobia tightening up is all part and parcel of a campaign to produce a situation in which Britain becomes more and more Islamic.
Thank you, Melanie Phillips. Now, with me in the studio is broadcaster and commentator Fahim Muhammad. Fahim, you heard some pretty robust responses there from Melanie Phillips regarding the definition of Islamophobia, but also the rise of what she referred to as Islamist sectarianism in British society. What's your response to what you just heard from Melanie Phillips?
She has her perspective, and I understand that. But I think whatever she said about the anti-Semitic sort of, rhetoric that's out there, which is really horrible, that's why we should concentrate on that, and it shouldn't really apply in the same aspect with Islamophobia. That is completely irresponsible, because we actually have the same thing that's happening. Even the fact that you're saying Islamism, and I don't even know what that word means, the kind of like Islamophobia.
Support for a sort of terrorist ideology
but even still,
rooted in
it kind of also, people look at it.
Yeah, but
people look at it as all Muslims. That's the thing. So we do need to have a definition.
I just push back on that. I think the British majority they have common sense, they're able to see the difference between groups like ISIS, for example, and the moderate, reasonable majority of British Muslims. They're able to distinguish between the two.
But to actually also pull up that there are now MPs that are Muslims that are coming on in Parliament, this is the whole of democracy, is to actually have the minority voices come and speak for that. So then what is the problem with that?
Let me just ask you a question. So take last year's general election, the 2024 general election, and let's just focus on that rather than contemporary events. 5 MPs, independent MPs, were elected, 5 Muslim MPs that were campaigning, many people would say, more on the issue of the Middle East than issues relating to Britain. And that is what is making a lot of people anxious, that it is a sectarianism that is not really at home within a tradition of liberal parliamentary democracy.
No, that's just what you've pulled up and you've highlighted and you've put a telescope on it.
Well, those MPs who won the seats were saying this was for Gaza.
But they have also had other issues. This was for Gaza. Of course, but at the same time, that is a very important point.
Do you understand why that's unacceptable to a lot of people?
It's not unacceptable because it's part of British politics to actually
It's got nothing to do with British politics.
Of course it does, because they are, also having allies with foreign countries, which we have to have a say about with regards to taxpayers' money and things that are going outside the country. Look, at the end of the day, with Kemi Badenoch, let's bring it back to her. When she's talking about the so-called, free speech being sort of like taken away from Labour, they actually, in their government, repeatedly showing that they also clamp down on it. It just depends on what exactly suits their agenda. They use the Public Order Act, right, to actually arrest people that are on the streets protesting with just a sign up. That even people that are silently praying, they actually also have those kind of arrests. Also for the fact that people are sort of maybe having some dissent on the royals. They had people also arrested for that. So it's not just the Labour government.
You don't need to convince me that we have a challenge with free speech, but what I would say is...
What, you just want to make sure that you can say whatever you want about Muslims and it's not a problem, when actually it shouldn't be that way. There should be a line. There is anti-Muslim hate, and there should be a definition of it.
There are very few, I'm going to be very real and direct, there are very few other groups in society who are trying to turn national politics into a debate about an issue thousands of miles away. The election of MPs to Westminster, they are there to serve the national interest, not the interest of Islam. They are there to serve the national interest. It's not an interest of Islam. It's a humanitarian interest. It's about international law. It's about So you don't see any problem with how the MPs have conducted themselves? If an MP wins an election and says, I'm doing this for Gaza, you don't have a problem with that?
That's just one aspect.
So you don't have a problem with it?
They're only saying that as one aspect. No one's just voting for them for that in particular case. You're just highlighting that. They have to be voted on for other issues actually pertaining to the UK.
In a lot of those seats...
It is just like everyone will have a sort of slogan and a propaganda line.
So you don't have a problem with it? So you don't have a problem with it, is what I'm asking.
I think it should be included, like every other party includes the fact that, we should support and have the right for defense, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's, Israel. So what's the difference? It's only because it doesn't, affect your agenda with a specific group that you may not particularly want to actually, promote.
Well, my agenda, the group I want to promote, is the national community, not a sectarian interest. But thank you so much for joining us, Fahim Muhammad. Very interesting.